what does your vision for the future look like? What does this actually, what does a world on not just a sound money standard look like? Because we could have a world that has that, but where there is still complete and perhaps more strengthened US dollar hegemony because we've missed the medium of exchange part,
Yeah.
and we've just focused on the store value. What does it look like in your view?
Yeah, that's actually why these things are incompatible over the long time together. So in one system, Bitcoin, if it stays decentralized and secure, then all prices fall relative to it. To stay decentralized and secure, it requires being a medium of exchange. These are the tools, these are the early indication tools or protocols that are going to ensure that it remains decentralized and secure, and ensure that it moves into a medium of exchange. Without them, it would be highly likely that it would get captured. Because through essentially all you would do is US dollar to gold, US dollar to petrodollar system, US dollar to Bitcoin, nothing would have changed. Right. And that, and I would say the vast majority of even Bitcoiners, today, because the Bitcoin, there's such a deep hole, are still measuring Bitcoin in price in the US dollar. And so I saw one of the questions that'll help people understand what I'm talking about here. And we'll try to kind of look at it from both systems in the question, but it had something about the financialization, right? Something, and help them to understand pricing in Bitcoin. And so over the last 30 years, everything you've ever known, and most people have made all of their money, not really made money, the entire wealth of the world is an artificial construct of extracting from some people, giving it to the other through an instrument of financialization. And through that financialization of lens, then it would look like houses have gone way up in price, because they would act as a store of value, because cash couldn't act as a store of value, because it was an inferior store of value. So you'd have to find other stores of value. Those stores of value became houses, those stores of value became stocks, and you start getting higher and higher bid prices on all of these stores of value that reinforce, instead of a house being a utility where you raise your family, it becomes a store of value. And then everybody races into the store of value, because if they're not in the store of value and only in cash, they're getting destroyed. So everybody goes and makes the same trade, pushing it up higher and higher and higher, further away from its utility value as a store of value. And then enter Bitcoin, and enter Bitcoin is repricing all of those to their utility value, and or the marginal cost of production, everything on the planet. So if you measured both those, this house, I've said that before, was $1.4 million 4 years ago. Now it's $2.1 million Canadian pieces of paper. In Bitcoin, it was 300 Bitcoin 4 years ago. Now it's 22 Bitcoin. In 4 years, this house will be 2 Bitcoin. And so, all Bitcoiners are facing the same choice. When do I want to buy this asset? Because a lot of Bitcoiners want to buy a house, because they've been so locked out of the housing market, because everybody's racing into it, leveraged against it. And so they can't wait to spend their Bitcoin on a house. And everybody is able to make that choice whenever they want, but it's going to keep happening, right? In 10 years, this house might be 0.1 of a Bitcoin. And so if I had a whole bunch of Bitcoin, as Bitcoin is repricing this into the house to its utility value, I can make a choice anytime to be able to use my Bitcoin to be able to price my house. If I price it today, what I'm really paying for is a way overpriced house, because people see it as a store of value, and it's a really bad store of value compared to Bitcoin. Really bad store of value. Now, if you want a house because of your family and your neighborhood and everything else, you should do that. You should do whatever you want to at your choice. But if you're in the store of value that everyone else is in, because it's the only game in town, there's a new game in town.
I think that is it's a tough pill to swallow. It's going to be for a lot of people, but I think it's a very good one to swallow. because that's what your house should be, right? Like it should be where you should be buying it because you say, well, I want to live here with my family. I want to raise my kids here. I want to make memories here. I want this because of the utility that I get out of it.
100
Not
years
because,
ago, houses
yeah,
look different.
yeah.
They look like a neighborhood of young families, that was a community. Houses don't look like that anymore because all over the world, in other currencies that are debasing just as fast or faster, they're trying to get into your stores of value too. So this is how. So you have a global phenomenon bidding up houses far beyond the utility value as a store value, and all of the debt underlying that is contingent. It's a contingent liability against the entire system. So it has to keep going higher because you're having to debate. Because if that debt became due, if you didn't inflate that debt away, it's over. The whole thing crumbles. And so those assets are a core part. And so is commercial real estate, and all of these things are interlocked into inefficient stores of value. It's really terrible stores of value, but they were the best thing. They were the best stores of value for the last 30, 40 years. So everyone rushes into that trade thinking that I have to have a house to protect my wealth.
Well, and the sad thing is too that if you look at like the compound annual growth rate of the money supply, depending on what you look at, like, but even just in the US, you're looking at like high 6%, close to 7% for the CAGR of the money supply, which is also over a longer period about what the housing market increased by. It's about what the S&P increases by. It's about what everything that is supposed to be a benchmark or a good place to store your value increases by. But that means it's not increasing. You're just treading water.
Worse, it only captures half the equation. The other half of the equation that's stolen from you unnaturally is the actual deflation rate that should be in a house. The actual deflation rate of all the materials and all of the other things that as efficiency. Think about what a lumber mill looks like today versus what it looked like 100 years ago. Think about what any mining looks like. It's all completely almost automated. And these things are highly efficient operations that would mean all of the different products relative to the house should be far cheaper, not just neutral. So prices should have fallen in all of it.
And I think that is perhaps one of the most difficult things for folks to understand, even if they may understand that, okay, inflation is this bad thing and I'm feeling poorer because my purchasing power is dropping because of inflation. They're not actually seeing the extent of the rot that is there. They're not actually seeing the extent of the theft, which is you're not stealing, as you said, you're not stealing from the baseline. You're stealing from negative. You're stealing from deflation. And then making up for it and then some.
Right now, and as a result of that, you have to make bad investments, right? So you have to misallocate capital faster. Why government expands? As a result, you have to constantly misallocate capital faster and constantly create next waves of hype to be able to create more misallocation of capital, to be able to drive this instability in the system to ever increasing, which is a centralization of a function. Most people, even if you said today, people measuring the CPI and they're cheering because CPI is starting to come down or not coming down quite fast enough, and then there's going to be lower interest rates, so there's more liquidity. They're actually cheering, the market is cheering, you're going to have to debase currencies more.
Pump my bags, right?
Yeah, and it's wild. It's wild, and they're all measuring from zero inflation instead of an implied productivity rate in an economy, which should be negative.
It is kind of crazy that, like, I feel like a lot of people also get to perhaps this nihilistic point where it's like, yeah, screw it, print the money, pump my bags. Like, I hold enough assets; they're all gonna just go up like gangbusters when you start easing like crazy and getting that printer humming again. But what a sad state of affairs that's where we've gotten to, where it's like, well, yeah, even for people like a lot of Bitcoiners were like, well, yeah, I know it's theft. I know that inflation is theft, but at least that theft is pumping my bags too. And like, I get it, you're in the system, play the system for what it is. But I think it's kind of sad at a certain point.
So it is, then you could say the positive side. all of these individual actions in this, when somebody is going to sell their Bitcoin for US dollars and then make that trade, is just going to create more hardcore Bitcoiners and more people who understand this. If you think about all of the positive in this network and all of the people, even through these conversations, that you get a nuance that's a little deeper, takes you somewhere deeper. And then once you're into that, you can't unsee it. And you start to apply so you said something about the VC, Ego Death Capital, and you said one of the good guys in that in this. Well, we started Ego Death Capital because I saw this future. And then how do you accelerate this future with the best entrepreneurs? And I wouldn't have seen what was possible before I needed to put my time into this to and help this ecosystem thrive. And I wouldn't have seen all of what's happening. I wouldn't been able to work with these brilliant minds in creating this unless I did. So I'm so much the richer for it. Can't believe it. And when you see that, and then other people are joining their voices, and so that's accelerating as we start to understand. And once we understand kind of what this looks like at a deeper level, it touches everything else. More people start to understand and they move their time to it too. So you could get sad about the state of what the world looks like, or you could get massively optimistic about what it's going to look like from what everybody's doing.
And I should clarify, I am massively optimistic.
I know.
And actually, I have it's a good spot for a question that we got on Noster, which I thought was a good one. Somebody was wondering, what tangible tips do you have for transitioning your mindset to view the world outside of the current system? The person said, I've come to understand the need for this, but I have a hard time executing in the real world.
Then they're almost there. So then whoever wrote that, and you can reach out directly to me, and I'm happy to kind of pull a side conversation around tangible tips. But once you can hold two opposing thoughts in your mind and understand what the base reality of the one thought, kind of the money printer, and what the world is going to turn into under that, and you could say, this stays decentralized and secure, and what does this do? Then you start to make choices about which system do you want to give more energy to. And as you start to realize, I said it early in our conversation, why in 5,000 years of human history, we're always deceived in that we make the system. The entire world is out of our thoughts and actions. It doesn't just happen to us. We are part of the thing that makes, that informs the world. So if we're part of the thing that always has concentrated this before, then what I would argue is these two systems, the one that you're measuring from, most people are measuring from, is really strong in its hold over you without you knowing it. But the question that person just asked is, I now start to see them. Once you start to see them and you can hold both thoughts in your head, now you can move intentionally some more action into the new system. And that might be, if you just understand it now and you hold Bitcoin in self-custody, and it depends where you are on the paradigm, but you might want to run a node. That might be your next step. You might want to go to some meetups and meet other people. You might want to meet some of the developers that are working in this system. And as you connect with those people, you're going to see opportunities everywhere, because the world's full of massive problems as we transition, which creates opportunities for those that are leading the transition. So there's just so much abundance once you start to unlock what this new world is actually emerging and what that looks like, that you'll probably want to spend more time. And the question is, how do I start? What's an open, decentralized, permissionless protocol? You just go. You just start. And that might seem super simple, but it is that simple. You could write an article. You could share on Nostr. You could You could do what Walker's doing. You create a pocket podcast. There's nothing stopping you from doing whatever. You could create a business that brings value to tens of people or billions of people. You could start your own Fediment to help other people understand Fedi. You could do all sorts of things. The key is just starting.